On a misty morning in June 1990, Dr. Rebecca Harrison, a 29-year-old British archaeologist and adventure traveler, vanished without a trace from the ancient citadel of Machu Picchu in Peru, leaving behind one of the most perplexing disappearances in the history of South American tourism. Rebecca, who had completed her doctorate in pre-Columbian civilizations at Oxford University, had traveled to Peru to conduct research for her upcoming book about Inca architecture, and had been documenting the sacred site with meticulous detail for 3 days before her mysterious disappearance. That morning, she had joined a small group of international tourists for the traditional sunrise viewing from Machu Picchu, the towering peak that overlooks the ancient ruins, carrying her professional camera equipment and a detailed notebook where she recorded her archaeological observations. Where are you reading from? Share your city and country in the comments before we continue this story. According to fellow tourists, Rebecca had been particularly excited about exploring some of the lesser-known terraces on the eastern side of the complex, areas that were typically off-limits to casual visitors but accessible to researchers with special permits like herself. The last confirmed sighting of Rebecca was at approximately 7:30 a.m., when a park guard saw her walking alone toward the agricultural terraces, apparently following a narrow Inca trail that led into the cloud forest surrounding the archaeological site. When she failed to return to her hotel in Aguascalientes that evening and missed her scheduled train to Cusco the following morning, local authorities launched an immediate search operation that would involve hundreds of people over the following weeks. The Peruvian National Police, working with park rangers and local indigenous guides who knew every inch of the treacherous terrain, combed through the dense jungle and steep mountain paths surrounding Machu Picchu, but found no trace of the missing archaeologist despite their exhaustive efforts. 9 years later, in a discovery that would shock the archaeological community and provide disturbing answers to Rebecca's fate, traces of her presence would be found deep in the Amazon rainforest, revealing a story of survival, indigenous encounters, and ultimately tragedy that defied all expectations about what had happened to the brilliant young scholar. The initial search for Dr. Rebecca Harrison became one of the most extensive rescue operations in Peruvian tourism history, involving not only local authorities but also British consular officials, international rescue teams, and indigenous communities whose ancestral knowledge of the cloud forest proved invaluable in navigating the treacherous terrain. The search was complicated by the unique geography of Machu Picchu, perched on a narrow ridge between two towering peaks and surrounded by nearly vertical drops into dense jungle that could easily conceal a person who had fallen or become lost. Peruvian park authorities coordinated with the Guardia Civil and mountain rescue specialists to deploy helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras. But the thick canopy of the cloud forest and frequent weather changes made aerial searches extremely challenging. Ground teams followed every possible route Rebecca might have taken, including ancient Inca trails that wound through the jungle and connected Machu Picchu to other archaeological sites in the region, some of which had not been fully explored or mapped by modern researchers. The British Embassy in Lima provided additional resources and coordination, while Rebecca's parents, Professor James Harrison and Dr. Margaret Harrison, both respected academics themselves, traveled to Peru to assist in the search efforts and provide insights into their daughter's research interests and likely behavior patterns. Local indigenous guides from nearby communities volunteered their services, sharing traditional knowledge about the jungle and identifying areas where someone might seek shelter or find water if they had become lost or injured. The search revealed the incredible dangers posed by the terrain surrounding Machu Picchu, including hidden crevasses, unstable rock formations, and areas where the jungle floor dropped away into deep ravines that would be nearly impossible to escape from without assistance. After 6 weeks of intensive searching, covering an area of over 500 square kilometers, the official rescue operation was suspended, though Rebecca's family continued to fund private search efforts and maintained hope that she might still be found alive. The case attracted international media attention and sparked discussions about safety protocols for researchers and tourists visiting remote archaeological sites, leading to improved emergency procedures and communication systems at Machu Picchu and other Peruvian heritage sites. The years following Rebecca's disappearance were marked by persistent efforts from her family and the international archaeological community to keep the case active and continue searching for any clues about her fate. Despite the official investigation being scaled back due to resource constraints and the vast area that needed to be covered, Professor Harrison established the Rebecca Harrison Foundation for Archaeological Safety, which funded improved emergency communication systems at remote research sites and provided grants for safety equipment and training for field archaeologists working in dangerous locations. The foundation also sponsored annual search expeditions to Peru, bringing together experienced jungle guides, archaeologists familiar with the region, and volunteers who were determined to find some trace of Rebecca, or at least determine what had happened to her. Dr. Margaret Harrison became an advocate for better safety protocols in academic field research, working with universities and research institutions to develop comprehensive risk assessment procedures and emergency response plans for scholars working in remote locations. The archaeological community rallied around Rebecca's case, with colleagues from around the world contributing to search efforts and sharing theories about where she might have gone and what might have motivated her to leave the established trails at Machu Picchu. Several independent researchers and adventure filmmakers attempted to retrace Rebecca's possible routes, producing documentaries and articles that kept her story alive in academic circles, while also educating the public about the dangers faced by field archaeologists. The Peruvian government implemented new regulations for researchers working at Machu Picchu and other archaeological sites, requiring detailed itineraries, regular check-ins, and mandatory safety equipment for anyone conducting fieldwork in remote areas. Local communities near Machu Picchu continued to keep watch for any signs of Rebecca or her equipment, with some indigenous elders sharing stories and legends about foreigners who had disappeared into the jungle and sometimes emerged years later, changed by their experiences in the forest. The case became a symbol of the risks inherent in archaeological fieldwork and the dedication required to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations, inspiring both caution and determination among researchers who followed in Rebecca's footsteps. As years passed without any concrete evidence of Rebecca's fate, some began to accept that she might never be found, while others remained convinced that the jungle would eventually reveal its secrets and provide answers to one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries. On August 15, 1999, 9 years after Rebecca Harrison's disappearance, a team of botanists conducting biodiversity research in the remote Manu National Park, approximately 200 kilometers southeast of Machu Picchu, made a discovery that would reignite the investigation and provide the first concrete evidence of what had happened to the missing archaeologist. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, leading a joint expedition between the Smithsonian Institution and Peru's National University, was documenting rare orchid species when his team encountered an isolated indigenous community that had had minimal contact with the outside world for decades. The community elders, speaking through a translator, told the researchers about a white woman who had arrived in their territory many years earlier, injured and disoriented, and who had lived among them for several years before dying of illness. The description provided by the elders matched Rebecca's physical characteristics, and they mentioned that the woman had carried picture-making devices and had shown great interest in their traditional knowledge and ancient stories. Most significantly, the community had preserved some of Rebecca's belongings, including her waterproof camera case containing exposed film, her field notebook with detailed archaeological observations, and her distinctive Oxford University ring that her parents immediately recognized when shown photographs. The elders explained that Rebecca had arrived at their village after wandering through the jungle for many days, apparently having become lost after leaving Machu Picchu and following ancient trails that led deep into the Amazon rainforest. According to their account, Rebecca had been accepted into the community and had spent approximately 3 years learning their language and customs, documenting their oral traditions and helping with various community projects, before succumbing to a tropical disease that the traditional healers were unable to treat. The community had buried Rebecca according to their customs in a sacred grove, and they had preserved her belongings as a way of honoring her memory and the contributions she had made to their community during her time with them. This discovery provided the first concrete evidence of Rebecca's fate and revealed that she had survived her initial disappearance, living an extraordinary life among an indigenous community before ultimately dying far from her home and family. The discovery of Rebecca's belongings and the testimony of the indigenous community provided crucial insights into her final years and revealed a remarkable story of survival, adaptation, and cultural exchange that had taken place in one of the world's most remote locations. The developed film from Rebecca's camera contained hundreds of photographs documenting her journey through the jungle, her integration into the indigenous community, and her continued archaeological work recording traditional practices and oral histories that had never been documented by outside researchers. Her field notebook, written in a combination of English and the local indigenous language she had learned, revealed that Rebecca had initially tried to find her way back to civilization, but had eventually chosen to remain with the community after realizing the unique opportunity she had to study their culture and traditions. The notebook entries showed that Rebecca had adapted remarkably well to jungle life, learning traditional survival skills, participating in community ceremonies, and conducting informal ethnographic research that provided valuable insights into indigenous knowledge systems and their connections to ancient Inca traditions. Dr. Mendoza's team worked with anthropologists and linguists to translate Rebecca's notes and understand the full scope of her work with the community, revealing that she had documented traditional agricultural practices, medicinal plant knowledge, and oral histories that connected the community to the broader network of indigenous cultures in the Amazon basin. The indigenous elders shared stories about Rebecca's contributions to their community, describing how she had helped establish a small school, assisted with medical care using her basic first aid knowledge, and had been working on a comprehensive record of their traditional stories and customs when she became ill. The community's account of Rebecca's final months revealed that she had contracted a severe case of leishmaniasis, a parasitic disease transmitted by sandflies that is common in the Amazon region. And despite the efforts of traditional healers and her own attempts at treatment, she had died approximately 6 years after her initial disappearance from Machu Picchu. The elders expressed their deep respect for Rebecca and their sadness at her death, describing her as someone who had truly understood and appreciated their way of life, and they welcomed the opportunity to share her story with the outside world as a way of honoring her memory. The revelation of Rebecca's fate and the recovery of her research materials had profound implications for both the archaeological and anthropological communities, while providing her family with the closure they had sought for nearly a decade. Professor and Dr. Harrison traveled to Peru to meet with the indigenous community that had cared for their daughter, participating in a ceremony to honor Rebecca's memory and expressing their gratitude for the kindness and acceptance she had received during her final years. The community agreed to allow Rebecca's remains to be relocated to a site that could be visited by her family, while also maintaining their traditional burial customs and ensuring that her spirit would continue to be honored according to their beliefs. Rebecca's research notes and photographs were carefully preserved and studied by teams of experts, revealing groundbreaking insights into indigenous knowledge systems and their connections to ancient Inca civilization that would influence archaeological and anthropological research for years to come. The discovery led to the establishment of a new research program focused on documenting and preserving indigenous knowledge in the Amazon region, with the Rebecca Harrison Foundation providing funding and coordination for collaborative projects between academic institutions and indigenous communities. The Peruvian government recognized the significance of Rebecca's work and the importance of protecting indigenous communities and their traditional knowledge, implementing new policies that provided better support for collaborative research and cultural preservation efforts. The case also highlighted the need for improved search and rescue capabilities in remote areas, leading to the development of better emergency communication systems and coordination protocols between different agencies and communities involved in rescue operations. Rebecca's story became an inspiration for a new generation of researchers who sought to conduct ethical and collaborative fieldwork that respected indigenous rights and knowledge while advancing scientific understanding of ancient cultures and traditional practices. The indigenous community that had cared for Rebecca became partners in ongoing research projects, sharing their knowledge and perspectives while maintaining control over how their culture was studied and represented to the outside world. Annual memorial expeditions were organized to visit the site where Rebecca had lived and died, bringing together researchers, family members, and community representatives to continue the work she had started and ensure that her legacy would contribute to greater understanding and respect between indigenous and academic communities. The impact of Rebecca Harrison's story extended far beyond the immediate resolution of her disappearance, inspiring significant changes in how archaeological and anthropological research is conducted in remote and culturally sensitive areas around the world. The Rebecca Harrison Foundation expanded its mission to include advocacy for indigenous rights and collaborative research practices, working with international organizations to develop ethical guidelines for fieldwork that prioritized community consent and benefit sharing. Universities and research institutions implemented new safety protocols and cultural sensitivity training for researchers working in remote locations, using Rebecca's case as an example of both the risks and opportunities inherent in field research. The photographs and notes Rebecca had compiled during her years with the indigenous community were published in a comprehensive volume that became a landmark work in ethnographic research, providing insights into traditional knowledge systems that had never been documented by outside researchers. The indigenous community that had cared for Rebecca became advocates for their own rights and cultural preservation, using the attention generated by her story to secure legal recognition of their traditional territory and protection for their cultural practices. International funding agencies began requiring more comprehensive risk assessments and emergency preparedness plans for research projects in remote areas, while also mandating that indigenous communities be involved as partners rather than subjects in research affecting their territories. The case influenced legal frameworks for protecting indigenous knowledge and ensuring that communities benefit from research conducted in their territories, establishing precedents that continue to shape academic and policy discussions about ethical research practices. Rebecca's story was featured in numerous documentaries, books, and academic studies that examined the intersection of archaeological research, indigenous rights, and cultural preservation, educating broader audiences about the complexities of cross-cultural research and the importance of respectful collaboration. The annual Rebecca Harrison Memorial Lecture, established at Oxford University, brings together leading researchers, indigenous advocates, and policymakers to discuss advances in collaborative research and cultural preservation, ensuring that her legacy continues to influence how research is conducted in indigenous territories. The remote community where Rebecca spent her final years has become a model for community-controlled research, demonstrating how indigenous communities can maintain their cultural autonomy while participating in collaborative projects that benefit both local and global understanding of traditional knowledge systems. 15 years after the discovery of Rebecca's fate, her story continues to influence research practices and indigenous rights advocacy, while the community that cared for her has become a symbol of the positive outcomes that can result from respectful cross-cultural collaboration. The research program established in Rebecca's memory has documented traditional knowledge from dozens of indigenous communities across the Amazon basin, creating a comprehensive database that is controlled by the communities themselves and used to support their land rights claims and cultural preservation efforts. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, who led the expedition that discovered Rebecca's story, has dedicated his career to collaborative research practices and has trained hundreds of researchers in ethical fieldwork methods that prioritize community consent and benefit sharing. The indigenous community has used the international attention generated by Rebecca's story to secure legal recognition of their traditional territory and establish a community-controlled research station that hosts collaborative projects with universities and research institutions from around the world. Rebecca's parents, now in their 80s, continue to support the foundation's work and regularly visit the community where their daughter spent her final years, maintaining relationships that have become deeply meaningful to both families and community members. The photographic and ethnographic work Rebecca completed during her time with the community has been recognized as groundbreaking research that provides unique insights into traditional knowledge systems and their relevance to contemporary environmental and social challenges. International organizations have adopted the Rebecca Harrison Protocols for ethical research in indigenous territories, establishing standards that require community consent, benefit sharing, and long-term partnership commitments from researchers and institutions. The case has inspired a new generation of researchers who seek to conduct collaborative and respectful fieldwork, with many citing Rebecca's story as motivation for pursuing careers that bridge academic research and indigenous advocacy. The community's traditional healers have worked with medical researchers to study the treatments they attempted to use for Rebecca's illness, contributing to research on tropical diseases and traditional medicine that has benefited both local and global health initiatives. Educational programs based on Rebecca's story are taught in universities around the world, helping students understand the ethical complexities of cross-cultural research and the importance of building genuine partnerships with indigenous communities rather than simply extracting knowledge for academic purposes. 20 years after the revelation of Rebecca Harrison's extraordinary survival story, her legacy continues to shape discussions about archaeological ethics, indigenous rights, and the responsibilities of researchers working in culturally sensitive environments. The Rebecca Harrison Foundation has evolved into a leading organization for promoting collaborative research practices, providing grants and training for projects that demonstrate genuine partnership between academic institutions and indigenous communities. The remote Amazon community where Rebecca lived has become a center for sustainable development and cultural preservation, using income from carefully managed research partnerships and ecotourism to support education, healthcare, and traditional cultural practices. Rebecca's research notes and photographs have been digitized and made available through a community-controlled database that allows indigenous communities worldwide to share knowledge and strategies for cultural preservation while maintaining control over how their information is accessed and used. The annual memorial expedition to Rebecca's burial site has evolved into an international conference on collaborative research and indigenous rights, bringing together researchers, community leaders, and policymakers to discuss advances in ethical research practices and community-controlled development. Her story has been incorporated into international law and policy discussions about indigenous rights, with the Harrison Principles being cited in United Nations documents and international treaties that establish standards for research in indigenous territories. The archaeological community has embraced Rebecca's legacy by establishing new ethical guidelines that require researchers to demonstrate long-term commitment to the communities where they work, moving beyond extractive research models toward genuine partnership and mutual benefit. Medical researchers studying tropical diseases have built upon the traditional knowledge documented in Rebecca's notes, leading to new treatments and prevention strategies that have saved thousands of lives in Amazon communities, while ensuring that traditional healers receive recognition and compensation for their contributions. The indigenous community's oral traditions now include stories about Rebecca that have been passed down to younger generations, ensuring that her memory and contributions are preserved according to traditional cultural practices, while also inspiring continued collaboration with outside researchers. Educational institutions worldwide use Rebecca's story to teach students about the importance of cultural sensitivity, ethical research practices, and the value of indigenous knowledge systems, helping to prepare a new generation of researchers who understand their responsibilities to the communities where they work. Today, more than 3 decades after Dr. Rebecca Harrison vanished from Machu Picchu and began an extraordinary journey that would end in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. Her story continues to inspire and guide researchers, indigenous advocates, and policymakers working to create more ethical and collaborative approaches to cross-cultural research. The site where Rebecca lived and died has become a place of pilgrimage for researchers and advocates who come to honor her memory while learning from the community that cared for her, demonstrating the profound connections that can develop between people from different cultures when mutual respect and understanding guide their interactions. The Rebecca Harrison Foundation operates programs in more than 30 countries, supporting collaborative research projects that prioritize indigenous rights and community control, while advancing scientific knowledge and cultural preservation efforts that benefit both local communities and global understanding. Her parents' dedication to continuing Rebecca's work has created lasting partnerships between academic institutions and indigenous communities, proving that tragedy can be transformed into positive change when channeled through commitment to justice and respect for cultural diversity. The research methodologies developed in response to Rebecca's story have become standard practice in anthropological and archaeological fieldwork, ensuring that future researchers understand their ethical obligations and the importance of building genuine partnerships with the communities where they work. The indigenous community that cared for Rebecca has become a model for community-controlled development and cultural preservation, demonstrating how traditional knowledge and practices can be maintained and strengthened while engaging with the modern world on their own terms. Rebecca's photographic and ethnographic work continues to provide valuable insights for researchers studying traditional knowledge systems, environmental conservation, and sustainable development practices that respect indigenous rights and cultural autonomy. The annual Rebecca Harrison Memorial Lecture has become one of the most prestigious events in the archaeological and anthropological calendar, bringing together leading thinkers to discuss advances in collaborative research and the ongoing challenges of conducting ethical fieldwork in an increasingly connected but culturally diverse world. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that research is ultimately about human connections and mutual understanding, and that the most valuable discoveries often come not from extracting knowledge, but from building relationships based on respect, reciprocity, and shared commitment to preserving cultural diversity and traditional wisdom. The legacy of Dr. Rebecca Harrison lives on in every research project that prioritizes community consent and benefit sharing, in every partnership between academic institutions and indigenous communities, and in every researcher who chooses collaboration over extraction, proving that even in tragedy, extraordinary lives can inspire positive change that benefits countless others for generations to come.